like to welcome everybody to the July 5th meeting of Minot City Council. Let's start off with the roll.
Evans? Here. Janser? Olson?
Here.
Pittner?
Here.
Quadrigula?
Here.
Ross?
Here. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the mayor's report. Not a whole lot to report on the last couple weeks or the last week and a half or so. I did have a meeting with the Park District, or members of the Park Board. Had a meeting with Senator Hoeven over United Postal Service in the area. Met with city staff over the Souris River Flood Protection Project. Few nights downtown at Arts in the City. And spent the 4th of July at Roosevelt Park listening to music. So that is all I have. Any questions, comments, anything? Okay. City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As always, there's the City Manager memo available in the packet, available to the Council and to the public. I did want to highlight and potentially receive any input from the Council with regard to one matter that I did address in the council memo, and that being that due to some recent employee turnover, we no longer have the 2 electrical inspectors available on staff. So we have partnered with the state, and they are currently doing electrical inspections in the city of Minot for projects. And there is some potential for that to become a permanent change. It's something we'll talk about through the budget. As far as I'm aware, they started doing electrical inspections last Tuesday afternoon. And I think so far things have gone well. We did stipulate to them that many of our contractors and citizens within Minot have an expectation of inspections being done and visited within 24 hours of request, and the state has committed to do that. As well as, should this become a permanent solution, the state of North Dakota would hire an electrical inspector specifically for Minot in the Minot region that would be based out of Minot. But anyway, I'd be willing to listen to any thoughts or comments or feedback that the council may have on potentially making that permanent. And we will also have a follow-up meeting with the state representatives later this month, after we've had this temporary solution in place for a few weeks, to visit with city staff and state staff on whether or not there's any issues or concerns, and talk about how things are going or things that aren't going well and those kinds of things. And so we'll report back more definitively after that, so that way council has a better awareness of how that's going before you make a final decision budgetarily whether or not this becomes permanent or stays temporary, and we work on filling those positions. So, but with that, I'd be happy to hear any questions or feedback that the council may have with regards to that development.
Council.
City Manager, can you tell us sort of how much we have allotted or have allotted in the past in the city budget for the 2 positions versus what it would cost us to contract with the state?
According to current figures, to support the 2 positions between wages and benefits and those things, it's estimated around $200,000 a year. And it fluctuates between $50,000 to $70,000 a year in electrical inspection fees as a revenue source. So we subsidize it anywhere from $150,000 to $130,000 a year to provide that service. It is a service that the state provides for many communities throughout the state, but a lot of the bigger cities do have their own inspectors in place. And it is something that I've had some questions from some other state representatives of why the city continues to do that. But again, as we get into some tough budget decisions, one of the first things we're looking for is duplication of services to cut, and this is one potential. So again, we're trying it out in the interim. But it could potentially be a savings of anywhere from $130,000 to $150,000 a year that can be allocated to other needs or trimmed from the budget permanently.
Follow up, so the state doesn't charge, they would get the fees collected? We wouldn't have to pay them anything above that?
The city of Minot would not have to pay anything. They would collect the revenues from inspections just the same as we do. Right now, we get about 90% of the revenues, and the state keeps 10% of it.
Okay.
So we're doing all the work, they get 10% of the revenue share. If they were to take it permanently, they would keep 100% of the revenues, and we wouldn't have to pay anything.
Anything else? Paul?
Just with the update, I'd like some feedback from local electrical contractors with how the process is going. They're the customers in this ordeal, along with citizens that do their own self-wires. But we need to make sure that we're open for business and we're efficient, and Minot's a place that we're able to do business effectively and efficiently. So I want to make sure we have feedback and maybe some customer satisfaction from some of the electrical contractors in the city with that update.
Carrie?
And to that end, I know we have the budget to move forward. Would it be fair, Alderman Pittner, when is our next meeting, July 28th, to report back a little bit on that, and then we can make maybe a more formal decision on how we'd like to proceed?
Alderwoman Evans, Alderman Pittner, the next meeting will be July 18th.
18th, yeah, sorry.
FYI. We'll have, I don't know if staff will have met with the state representatives by then yet. I think we set up our meeting for the 20th or something like that. But definitely within probably the first meeting in August, we could report back to you. Again, the state has agreed temporarily to do inspections on behalf of the city through the end of August. And then depending on how that meeting goes, we can talk. I did provide the council an email of concerns from Luke Telema, who's in charge and manages inspections on behalf of the city, outlining some of his concerns with the change. But again, we did discuss all of those concerns with the state staff, and they felt that they could address those adequately to Minot's satisfaction. I also, in my monthly communication meeting with John Kutch, the CEO of Trinity, obviously the Trinity Hospital is a big project right now. We don't want to slow that down. So I did let him know the change and then let us know if there were any issues or concerns on having the state do the inspections. If anything came up, that I needed to be aware of that. And that would go the same for anyone else that's getting electrical inspections, and why I bring it up in this public meeting, that if there are circumstances that are a negative change from potentially doing this, I need to be aware of that so that I can advise you as the council whether or not that's a good change or not. But I will report that back as soon as I can.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you've said, and I guess I would echo what Paul said earlier. It seems like we've been making a lot of efforts in the past couple of years to be more responsive to the development process, both in terms of individuals and larger organizations trying to develop things. And I think the issue of customer response would be a very important one, besides, of course, the issue of quality assurance. I mean, if they're in the inspection business, I presume they're going to deliver a quality product, but I think we risk giving up some measure of control and overall conduct of a program if we farm some of it out. I mean, obviously saving $100,000 is a good idea, needs to be explored further, but I want to make sure that we don't do anything to undermine the greater efficiencies and responsiveness we've built in the past couple of years. So, I think in terms of the implications for planning and inspections, I'll be very curious to hear what staff has to say about that and what consumers of those services have to say too.
Thank you. Anything else?
With that, Mr. Mayor, I have nothing else to report tonight unless council has any other questions for me underneath the city manager report.
Okay. Moving on to number 5, which is the city attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I submitted a written report, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the city attorney? If not, we'll move on to consent agenda. We have 9 items on our consent agenda. What are the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Evans. Is there a
Second.
Second. Second by Pittner. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. Moving on to action items, 8.1, community contribution requests for the 2023 annual budget. What are the wishes of the council?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2023 budget request by the 6 organizations.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Audrey. Discussion.
Thank
Lisa.
you, Mr. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for clarification, the full amounts is what you were, that's the motion?
The 1.073,500, yep.
Any further discussion? Paul?
I was going to make a motion that would have been a little different. I think it's something that we need to take great consideration with. I was going to actually I'm not going to support this motion because I think we're going to be facing a difficult budget process. We're going to be asking a lot of department heads within the city to trim the, I want to say trim the fat, but I don't know if there's any fat on the budget to be trimmed from department heads. I was going to actually deny Project B and ask for a 5% reduction in all the property tax levy applications. Because again, I think we're looking at a reality that is not very friendly to what we could be facing as a community. And, Minot Area Council of the Arts, a 5% reduction. They have a building that's programmable downtown now in the Carnegie Building. Project B, we've helped navigate through the NDR program. They've also have a commercial space that can be help subsidize their operations. Again, it's not probably a popular motion. However, I think it's one that has to be introduced. I think it's one that has to be considered because, again, we're going to ask everyone that works in this organization to do the same. And I think that we have to look at the community as holistically and from an encompassing outlook and say that we're all in this together. And if we have to trim the fat, and if our departments have to trim the fat, and we have to remove items that really do lend to the quality of life and public safety within our community, then I think some of our community partners can do the same. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Any further discussion? Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. I guess maybe just another clarifying question. Some years, if I recall correctly, this came as part of the budget process, and it seems like it's a little bit earlier now, so maybe someone can explain, because it seems like it's easier to deal with as part of the budget, so maybe that's a question for the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Olson. And so this is a little bit of a change that I guess I've implemented into the budgeting process. I think it's more successful to have some community dialogue with those entities that we fund outside of our organization, which is why we've kind of formalized this process a little bit where they fill out an actual request for us, and then we have them do a presentation to council, which is what happened at the last council meeting on what they're asking for and why. And then it gives the council some opportunity to ask some questions on what the community need is for that and how that meets within the aspirations that the council has set. And then this piece is a part which we didn't do last year, but I think staff would find helpful, and that is some direction from council as far as what of these community requests should be funded and at what level, as opposed to staff just taking a carte blanche. This is what you asked for, and you ask for it, you get it, and so we're handing it over to you. So this is an opportunity for the council to have that dialogue and give staff some direction, because we have to build that into the budget. So if I'm building $750,000 of community funding into the budget, well, that's $750,000 I have less to do new positions or compensate for the increase in fuel costs and all those other different things that are going on right now. And to Alderman Pittner's point, it is going to be a tough budget this year. We still have a lot of weight on the finances of the city with regards to NAWS and flood mitigation. Council has taken some previous actions with regards to funding different things, such as wayfinding signage, and street bridge. And not all these are funded out of the general fund, but so there's a lot of things out there that we're trying to fit into the budget. In addition, we did a wage and benefit study here recently, first time in a few years. I know that this has been a priority for council over the last several years to make sure that we're paying competitive wages, so we decrease turnover of our employees. Well, we're looking at about a $1.1 million increase in wages just to keep up with our competitors. And that's just wages. That's not including the trickle over into investment in retirement and other benefits and those things that we provide employees. And then you take in the supply chain issues and inflation issues. I mean, we're seeing double the cost in fuel right now to operate city vehicles that we saw last year. And then in addition, the increase we had a lot of budget amendments this last year, increases in projects and replacement of equipment and all those kinds of things. And then we also have a pretty clear message from our constituency through the community survey that there's no interest in increasing of tax burden. So we have a lot of pressures, a lot of things that are swelling, becoming more costly. And so to Alderman Pittner's point, do we take a look at some of our community funding to help with that? I'm not suggesting that we completely cut funding for community funding, because those organizations are in the same boat we are. They're suffering from increased costs and needs and all those other types of things. So I'm definitely not recommending that we completely cut out funding for them, but at the same time, it's a difficult message for our employees when we have a lot of needs that we've been doing without for years, that we continue not to fund, but then these community requests come forward and get approved without any additional budget considerations that we're applying to the rest of the organization. And I've been in communities where that's been a difficult message, right? Some previous communities I've been in, we've cut positions while at the same time some other community organization wants to add a position and comes and asks the council for money and they get it. So we can pay $50,000 for this organization to have a new position, but we can't spend $35,000 adding in a new police officer or whatever that is. That becomes a difficult message from a management perspective to try to continue to navigate with our employees. So I do think it's a worthwhile conversation for the council and why we have it on the agenda.
Paul?
I guess I'll make a motion to amend the original motion, if that would be the appropriate wording, the motion to amend, to move to not accept Project B application and approve the remaining requests with a 5% reduction from last year's approved funding levels of the property tax levy funded applications. Minot Commission on Aging would be $146,300. Minot Area Council of the Arts, $38,000, and First District with Health Unit would be $285,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can talk about it.
If I may continue, again, this is to the employees that we're going to be asking a lot of you to milk every last drop out of your budgets, out of we talk about in our council retreat, our budget workshop, doing less with less. And if we're going to ask that of our employees and we're going to ask that of our staff, I think we can ask that of our community partners. One of the alternatives on this memo was to cut funding. I believe it was alternative 4. Again, I don't support that. I don't think it's appropriate. I think we do have a role to play in helping our community partners, but we have to be realistic and we have to be honest with ourselves what the cost of running this government is. So,
Carrie?
A few points of clarification. It was my motion. I didn't accept the amendment, so he's going to have to make a new motion, right? Right, I did the original motion.
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans, Alderman Pittner made a motion to amend the main motion, and that was seconded by Alderman Padragula. So
Okay.
that motion is on the table right now for discussion.
To amend.
To amend your motion. Yep.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay.
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. It's noted in the memo, but I certainly want anyone watching online or whatever to know that whatever action that we do take tonight is just a recommendation for the proposed budget. We will still have one more opportunity to vote on this, if I'm understanding this correctly.
City Attorney? Or whoever wants to grab it.
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, you'll actually have 2 more opportunities to vote on it because it's an ordinance. So tonight, this motion would require 3 votes since there are 5 members here for any approval. Ultimately, on second reading, it will require 4 votes at the council.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
No.
Ross,
Yes.
Evans,
No.
Janser, sorry, he's not here, Olson,
Yes.
I have 2 more points of clarification too, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
One is, I would really implore the city manager not to continue insinuating we put funding to the Ann Street Bridge. We haven't. That is the second time from the dais you've said that, and the public really gravitates towards that. This governing body only voted to put it back in the capital improvement project. No funding from city money has been designated yet. And also, there is no talk on the table in any of the 2023 budget proposals we've had to cut any city positions. So I want that to be clear. Actually, the ask is for more positions. Thank you.
If I may respond, Mr. Mayor. Just some points of clarification. Yes, that is correct. The council has directed city staff to include it in the CIP, but the CIP is a working document to staff to direct us to try to make those things a reality. So, and while it may not necessarily be in the next couple of budgets, at some point, staff has a directive from council to figure out how to make that project happen, which includes finding funding to do that. I will say publicly that when I present the city manager's recommended budget as is required by city ordinance, I will not be recommending any funding next fiscal year for either the Ann Street Bridge or the wayfinding signage, because we just don't have the money to do that. Currently, just so council is aware and so the public is aware, we are trying to avoid any position cuts, but with the increases in cost, the increases in wages and those kinds of pressures on the budget, right now, the current budget as it stands is 3.4 million in expenditures more than what the projected revenues are. And we're required to present a recommendation for a balanced budget. So city staff and management are looking at how to trim $3.4 million out of the current budget to do that. Now, we did have some direction from the council prioritization session here a few weeks ago, where there may be some interest in a potential incremental increase in taxes and revenues, multiple revenue areas to help alleviate some of that, and staff is looking at that as well. But at the end of the day, we have to deal with the financial reality that we have in front of us, and that is the cost of everything is getting higher, and the revenues aren't growing as quickly as the cost of doing business is, and so we got to figure out how to do that.
Paul?
Again, these aren't easy decisions that are made. I'm envious of councils of the 2012, 13, when sales tax was flowing through Minot and property taxes values were through the roof, and we had more money than we knew what to do with. The reality is we're on the other side of the spectrum now. We're at double-digit rate of inflation. We have supply chain issues. We can't get parts. We're bulk ordering parts for projects that we haven't even started yet, so that we at least have them here. So we actually have work to do. Again, these aren't easy conversations. I hope we can increase funding for these organizations next year. I hope that's the case. I really do. I'll be the first one to support them. But the reality is that that's not the financial situation that we're in, and we are stewards of taxpayer dollars, and that's why I'm going to support the motion.
Anything else before we move on? Okay. Next item on the agenda, 8.2, letter of support.
We got to call the roll.
Vote on the main motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As
I'll
amended.
withdraw the main motion. I'll withdraw the main motion.
I think they still have to vote on the main motion since it was
Okay.
as amended.
Okay. The vote now is on the main motion as amended. Let's call the roll.
Excuse me, the amendment failed or passed?
Pass.
The amendment passed.
Okay.
Evans,
No.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
No.
Ross,
Yes. Moving on to 8.2, letter of support to North Dakota Department of Commerce for the RWIP Workforce Programs Grant request from Minot Area Chamber EDC. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Lisa, second by Steve.
By me.
Discussion. Paul?
It was seconded by me, is what I was saying.
What's that?
I thought it was, maybe Steve seconded it.
Steve's got it.
Okay, never mind.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Let's call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Moving down to item 9, personal appearances. Anybody who wishes to speak in front of the council, now is your opportunity. Yes.
Supposed to be here.
What's that?
I assume I'm supposed to be here.
Yes. Yeah, why don't you pull the mic and there should be a, yeah, it
Sound
sounds
like it's working. Good afternoon. I appreciate the time for you guys to sit here and listen to what I have to say. My name is Gary. I'm with Nodak Towing here out of Minot. I did email, I believe everyone here with the exception of maybe the city attorney last week about the issue I'm bringing forth today. I don't know how many of you actually got it. I know Mr. Padragula got it. He did email me back and said he was going to look into the matter. The matter I raise has been raised at least twice with both Minot Police Department as well as the city manager, most recently as, I want to say November last year. 2017, several of the tow companies got together and asked if a rotation matter would be created so that, and I don't like to use the word monopoly because it's very strong, but we asked that a rotation be established for accident calls when people don't know who to call, and it was. It lasted just shy of 90 days. There were roughly 250 calls that were dispatched with a record through Minot Police Department. Of those 250 calls, just over half, at 51%, were dispatched to one company and one company only. There were some differences of opinion as to why the program was scrapped. I have my own. It's not something to share tonight, but I did have my own. And they just went back to doing things the way they had always done things, which as far as I know goes back 40 plus years. November of last year, we did reapproach Minot Police Department. Chief Klug and the city manager also took a meeting with us to see if that's something that they may be interested in revisiting, since it obviously did not work the last time around. Just generally due to a lack of the actual rotation. When over half of the calls are going one direction, it's kind of an oblong rotation. It flops around, it doesn't roll as it should. They did some research. I have emails from both the city manager and the chief of police, as well as the original rotation records from 2017. So I'm not here just talking, I actually have the paperwork to go with it. And we're once again reaching out. We'd like this to be considered as a city matter. It spreads revenue out. It's not just my company here that's speaking. I've spoke to just about every tow company in town, and they're all favorable of this. The solution that was recommended in November was to put I want to call it a flash card in each one of the patrol cruisers. The flash cards are there. I have seen them. They are in no particular order with the names of companies on them. But what I can tell you is this: myself and another tow company owner that I spoke to just before I walked in this building today, since November when the flashcards were initiated, none of us, or neither of us for that matter, have seen any proof that they're being used. It seems like it's another one of those as we've always done kind of things. And while that does work, and it has its place, it's not necessarily always the best option, and that's what we're asking people to take a look at. The rotation systems do work. I've been a member of my industry for 17 years, all over the country. They do work. They reduce response times. They curve bills that would be otherwise inflated and outlandish. But basically, it builds a competition. And as anyone here that's in business knows, when you have a competition for that, rates generally settle out even and in a lower number. So as I said, it's just what I want to bring to the table. I would like it to be considered at some point by a group as a whole. The paperwork that I have, you guys are welcome to. It's all public city record. It's where I was able to get it from. That's where we're at. I said I've spoke to, I want to say 5 out of the 7 company owners here in town. And everybody is genuinely on board. They would be interested in seeing this reinstated to where it actually rotates the way it should and doesn't end up with a 50% lopside. I said 50% one way, and their 51% is what it rounded out to, and then 49% spread between 5 other companies. Does anyone have any particular question?
Any questions? Thank you. John, do you have, Chief, do you want to respond?
Chief?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes. I have the same record that he's reviewing, and I can't speak for former Chief Olson as to why he discontinued the rotation, other than the fact that the documentation shows that there was only one company that responded 100% of the time, and that was Olson's Towing, and that's because they're under contract with us. The frustration with the contracted company is that they have to respond on holidays, nights, bad weather, and the other companies don't. So they were getting the calls on the holidays, and the other companies wouldn't answer the phone. Nodak Towing had 18 calls during the time they were reviewed. They answered 11 of them. So we can go back to that, but they were also suspended for reasons like not having insurance. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but we can consistently get pointed at as doing something wrong by using our contract company. And we did review what has taken place since we started the flashcards. They're not always used, but what the officers are telling them, because we went back and watched body cam videos over the past couple months, and what they're telling them is, this is on you. It's on you. We all have cell phones. We can Google tow companies in Minot. We can come up with the name of somebody, and that's what they're doing the majority of the time. We referred them back to the cards, so that would be a resource that they have. But ultimately, whatever the person that needs the service does to get a tow truck there, if they can't make a decision, we go with our tow company. We have to get the vehicles moved. But we lean toward just putting it on the owner of the car. If we can avoid the card at all, we don't use it. We're going to push them back to that. That's one of the methods that we have in place to make sure that it's a fair process. Every officer now has a card. They're all random order. And hopefully, as a matter of fact, I think the first one they reviewed, that accident call went to Nodak Towing. So I know they've been called in the last 3 to 5 months. But I'd take any questions from the dais.
Any questions? Go ahead, Harold.
If I can just provide a point of clarification here, I think we're oversimplifying the towing conversation a little bit, and just for the listening public and others to understand. So there's 2 different types of tows that we're talking about here that we're kind of using interchangeably. First one is a police required tow. This could be an abandoned vehicle. It could be an accident scene where the vehicle owner is no longer able to make decisions on themselves. Maybe they're being ambulanced out to a hospital, so they're no longer on scene. Those are considered police tows. Those we have a contract with that we just went through the RFP process and awarded last May, and that one is exclusively with Olson's Towing. The other type of tow is like what Chief is talking about now, where the owner is on scene, is capable of making their own decisions, and I agree, we probably shouldn't be making recommendations or trying to steer them and making that decision towards one company or another. We have agreed to have these lists of tow companies, so if the person at the scene insists that I don't know who to call, we have a card with some contact information that we can say, these are a list of the tow companies within the region for your information if you want to pick one and choose one. But again, those are the order of the tow companies listed on that are randomized, so not every officer has the same lists. So that way, if someone's always picking the first one on the list, well, the first one on the list is different per officer depending on which card they have. So we've tried to spread that out. But again, we're trying to avoid trying to play favoritism from one business to the other with regards to that. But when it comes to the police tows, that one we have exclusively with Olson's Towing. And those are in certain circumstances that the vehicle owner is not able to make that decision on their own behalf.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'd also point out that that is such a small fraction of the tows that we actually handle. We've seen accident numbers decrease over the past year. So if you take that and you break it down, you're actually looking at a person out of all those potential tow situations that we aren't using the contract, you're actually breaking that down among 7 companies that can be Googled, they can use the card, they can have their own choice made, or they could go with Olson's. Maybe that's who they choose anyway. We don't have control over that. So that is going to break that number down as far as what we're calling or as far as what's being called, because generally we don't even call them at that point. We just put it on the owner of the vehicle. So you're really breaking it down into a small number of calls. The rest of the calls that the tow companies get would be somebody's car breaks down and they go out and they get that. We don't have anything to do with that generally. So I guess I'll leave it at that unless there's other question.
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. So Chief, in this situation, who makes contact with the towing company? Is it the individual car owner or is it a dispatcher?
We try to put it on the individual car owner. Sometimes they're not able to think through that process, so if they make a decision, we'll either have dispatch do it or the officer will call them from their cell phone if they have to. But generally speaking, we try to leave all of that on the vehicle owner, and that frees up the officer's time to take care of the crash itself.
And that's exactly where I was going, if I could follow up. Just wanted to know if that was adding any additional time or, an extra step that either our officers needed to complete or dispatchers needed to complete. But it sounds like more it would be the auto owner that would be doing most of that.
Yeah, Alderwoman Olson, it also frees up dispatchers' time because they're not spending time explaining things to tow companies as well. So a rotating list may work, but that also puts it back on our dispatch center to keep track of that rotation and make those calls. Otherwise, who's going to keep track of it? So it really just simplifies the process for us, and our goal is not to add work where we don't have to.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to come before? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
I'm way over here. I know Mark's not here, so I'm just on an island. Are the cards that we hand out, are those like individual, like laminated cards that stay in the car, or are those like a business card, that we hand out to the owner and they can take it, the officer leaves?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Alderman Pittner, they're a business-sized card, but the officers just carry them with them. They're laminated cards so they can use them over and over. So if somebody can't make a decision, they'd hand it to them. It would have the list of tow companies in Minot and their phone numbers, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may have a brief moment more. I have seen the cards that Chief has mentioned. They're there. And as far as I know, they are getting used to a point. It's not much if they are getting used. What we're facing and what I've spoken to friends, family, coworkers, even customers that have come through our place after the fact for something else. And I'm not going to point fingers at anyone. Minot PD and police departments in general stand as a figure of authority. And in the RFP that the city manager spoke of here earlier, it actually states that officers are told, we use this company for our city towing specifically. That alone is enough of a persuasion to send somebody in that direction. I don't know if anyone here has ever been hit in the face by an airbag. They move at about 200 miles an hour. It'll really ruin your day. The last thing on your mind is who to call, and I understand that. We are a busy company. We've logged roughly 2,200 calls this year, less than 5 of which have had a PD officer on scene. Not all of those 2,200 calls were accidents. Obviously, it's not that busy here. But when an officer asks someone, and myself included, I've been in the situation, what tow company would you like? The first thing out of your, I don't care. My face hurts, I don't care. That's what it breaks down to. And then the next words that are likely to arise are, well, we use this company. Done deal. Okay, whatever. People don't care. All we're trying to do here is ensure a fair shake for all of the companies in town. We're all small business, we're all small revenue. None of us are out here getting rich, especially with the price of fuel and retaining employees having doubled and or tripled just in this year. All we're asking for is that somebody actually look into this a little bit further. I said myself, I've been in this for quite a long time. I may actually be the youngest person in the room here, but this has been my career. This is what I've always done. And I would like to see it shake out in the favor of small business here in Minot. I've watched a lot of really good friends locally lose their companies, and it doesn't have anything to do with what we're speaking on today, but just because the revenue generation isn't available. And it may be because it's all going one way and it may not. I wasn't privy to that information, but I don't like to see small businesses go under. And with COVID and the constraints that the economy's placed on all of us, it does make a big difference. And what we're talking about accident-wise here is actually a significant revenue. It is quite a bit of money for us. It's not money we're trying to take away from the individuals of the community or anything like that. 90% of what we're going to deal with is going to be insurance related anyway, so it's not like we're out here trying to run the members of the community into the ground. That's not what we're about. We're just looking, like I said, for that fair shake. And I'm not here for myself. I'm not here for Nodak Towing in its own. I am here for the other tow companies in town. We've all spoken about this repeatedly over the years. It's not a new issue, but it is an issue that needs to be risen. So I'll leave mine at that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Leif Snyder, resident here in Minot. I'll mess up this quote, but I believe one of you said that if you're not offering solutions or suggestions, you're just whining and complaining. So I have a series of suggestions for you, and I actually have them in writing, if I can approach the dais. I'm gonna put you to work, Picker. Suggestion 1, update the Magic Fund guidelines as soon as possible. They have not been updated since 2018. Change MADC to Chamber EDC, obviously, since the Chamber and Commerce and the MADC combined to create the Chamber EDC. This is from page 5 of the Magic Fund guidelines. It reads, no officer, director, member, or employee of the Magic Fund Screening Committee, the Minot Area Development Corporation, MADC, or the City of Minot may have an ownership position or financial interest in a business funded by the Magic Fund. Funding will not be considered until 12 months after an application disqualification under this paragraph terminates. So I'll read that again because it's important. No officer, director, member, or employee of the MADC may benefit, right? At the May 2nd City Council meeting, Souris Basin Planning Council made a presentation after requesting $2 million after they received $1 million previously. 1 year they received $500,000 in 2019, $500,000 in 2020. You voted to give the SBPC $780,000. That's an increase in previous funding of $280,000. In the presentation, they mentioned 9 downtown businesses that benefited from these magic funds, but only one of the businesses was mentioned by name in the presentation. Obviously, that was Prairie Sky Breads. I reached out to Lindsay Ulrichsen of the SBPC and asked what were the 9 businesses that benefited. Those businesses were Axel Group, and this is ownership or registered agents tied to them. So Axel Group, Ryan Ackerman, Atypical, Eric Johnson, Oslander LLC, Andrew Goodmanson, Credence Properties, Kevin Black, Dakota Apple Partners, Chad Thompson, E&M Capital, I believe that's Eric Tomke with Up Your Axe, Norsk Brothers, Chad Thompson, Prairie Sky Breads already, Whiskey 9, Jeremy Mahaney, Andrew Goodmanson, and Kevin Black. That's right on their website as far as ownership. How is it that Ryan Ackerman and Kevin Black can benefit from Magic Fund dollars given the guidelines when Ryan Ackerman and Kevin Black have both been on the MADC board for the years 2019, 2020, and now are on the Chamber EDC board 2021 and 2022? I've included a list provided to me of who was on those previous boards. In June of 2020, then Councilman Shannon Straight, at his last meeting as the appointee to the SBPC board, made the following motion. This is from their minutes. Motion was made by Shannon Straight to amend the revolving loan fund and the IRP, I don't even know what the IRP is, plans to allow the Souris Basin Loan Review Committee to approve and deny loans without board approval, and to revisit this policy after 6 months to ensure it still makes sense. Motion seconded by Charlie Adams. Roll call vote, all voted yes, motion carried. So the then elected Minot City Council member made the motion to give authority over Magic Fund tax dollars via the revolving loan fund away to the loan approval committee. Who is on this loan approval committee? So I asked Lindsay Ulrichsen once again for a list of past and present members. Present members include Darla Jost, Jerry Pilch, Jersey Benson, Jessica Ardall, Mike Mueller, Tony Pandolfo. Past members include Chappie Windsor and Kevin Black from 2017 to October of 2020. Turns out they have a conflict of interest form for the Souris Basin Loan Approval Committee. I mean, take a good look at it, because Section 4, it reads, former board members and/or officers are ineligible to apply or receive loan or grant funds, a Souris Basin revolving loan fund, loan for a period of 2 years from the date of termination of his or her services. They changed that to former board members and/or officers are ineligible to apply for or receive a Souris Basin revolving loan fund, loan for a period of 2 years from date of termination of his or her services. So rather than follow the conflict of interest form or policy, I guess they just changed the form and the policy by removing loan and grant funds. Suggestion number 2, renegotiate the agreement between the SBPC and the City of Minot in which they distribute Magic Fund dollars to include the following. A, the Souris Basin Planning Council should be required to report to city officials who they approve and who they deny or turn away from Magic Fund dollars, just as the Magic Fund Screening Committee has to report to you guys, the City Council, who they turn down and who they approve. Currently, the SBPC is only required to report to city officials who they approve, or at least that's how I read it. B, no more loan approval committee making the final say on who is approved or denied Magic Fund dollars. Proper oversight includes an elected official from the city of Minot to vote on this. Thus, the board, who has a city council member appointed to it, should be the final say, not a committee who most people don't even know exists. If the SBPC Loan Approval Committee wants to make recommendations as a committee normally does, so be it. Suggestion number 3, any nonprofit or association seeking City of Minot tax dollars should be required to disclose who is on their board of directors. Any nonprofit or association who does not publicly display their board of directors on their website should receive a no vote, whether they are seeking funding or a contract with the city. At least that's how I would vote. Mayor Ross, congratulations on your elected seat. You ran on transparency, and I think that's a great thing, because obviously I believe in a lot of transparency, as you all know, because I've shared some of this with you before. Mayor Ross, traditionally the mayor has a position on the Chamber EDC Board of Directors. If I were you, I would consider appointing someone in your place from council, and this is just a suggestion, because your live-in girlfriend / domestic partner is listed as the vice president of the Chamber EDC. I personally consider that a conflict of interest. I would also suggest you abstain from votes involving Chamber EDC funding. Suggestion number 5. In the recent election, a lot of talk about businesses and corporations giving funds to candidates. I agree, which is against North Dakota state law. It was obviously an issue. We had 2 candidates do it. Mayor Ross, originally you received funds from corporations, as did one of your opponents. You then updated your campaign contribution forms and then filed a letter with the city clerk stating you returned the funds, that's good, via checks to the businesses and included the check numbers. You updated your contribution forms that still show contributions now from individuals. Since a list of check numbers proves nothing, I would suggest you file copies of the canceled or endorsed checks with the city clerk as well. You ran on transparency in government. I think this would serve you well if you could prove you gave the money back and the individuals issued you a campaign contribution.
Any questions?
I wasn't quite done. I don't know if my 5 minutes were up, but that's okay.
No questions?
I am not going to pretend that you want to jump at the chance to nominate me to sit at that dais. But this kind of stuff, I kid you not, there are voters who are just as upset as I am. That's all I got.
Anyone else want to address the council? If not, we'll move on to item 10, and that is miscellaneous and discussion items. Anyone? That leads us to number 11, which is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.